Welcome to the Thriving Tides podcast. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Julianne. If you're an entrepreneur who loves self-care, you're in the right place.
We can't wait to share our experiences with you. Could our futures be predicted in 78 cards?
Ooh, that's a heavy question, Steph. You're just jumping in with a bang.
Right, with a bang. Today we're actually talking about tarot, which is, I'm really excited about it. And we put the question on social media if you guys wanted to hear. And we had a couple people say that they really wanted to hear this episode. So I'm really excited about this episode because, again, hippie and me, love it.
We're really feeding that inner hippie and stuff on this podcast.
Oh, yeah. I'm loving it. But tarot decks actually date back all the way to the 15th mid-century. And it's funny because no one really knows where exactly it came from. There's a lot of theory that it came from like ancient Egypt again. And for the most part, it was kind of developed from the occult or for spiritual purposes, especially like in the European is where it actually really grew. But it was actually a card game first. But again, back then, a card game wasn't a card game in a sense, which I thought was really interesting. Again, I watched a YouTube video on it. It seemed kind of weird, and the way he explained it seemed really cool. But anyways, today, tarot decks and other kinds of cards similar to it are still kind of used as a tool to connect with oneself on kind of like a higher dimensional path, which I think is kind of cool. And like I mentioned, there's 78 cards per tarot deck, and they each kind of have their own story per card and their own imagery and their own meaning. And there's some people that study tarot to be a tarot expert, and there's tarot cards that follow like general principles, but there are also other things such as like oracle cards or angel cards, moon cards, affirmation cards. I think you have an affirmation deck.
Yeah.
So there's more than just the tarot deck, but what we're talking about mostly about is kind of the tarot decks. And that's the main one that most people kind of start with. And it's kind of nice because those other cards kind of provide other nuggets of ideas that you can kind of add on to tarot spreads. And so that's why we'll probably touch a little bit on it because I really love oracle cards in my opinion. And just to kind of talk a little bit more about the cards. So yes, there's 78 cards. And from the website Biddy Tarot, they talk a little bit more about the different kind of suits of the cards in a sense. So the 22 major arcana cards represent life's karmic and spiritual lessons. And the 56 minor arcana cards reflect the trials and tribulations that we experience on a daily basis. So in a sense, the major cards, kind of huge karmic cards, whereas the other ones are very much kind of a daily basis. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And when you read tarot, there's so many different ways to read tarot. There's so many different styles. It also depends on if you're reading it for yourself or if someone's doing the reading for you. When you lay out the cards in a certain way, it's called a spread. And there's so many different variations of spreads. So for example, one that I noticed a lot of people use, I think was used on actually our tarot reading, was the past, present, and future. There's also just the daily one. There's the Celtic cross ones. There's so many different kinds of spreads. And if you ever purchase a tarot deck, go to tarot readings, everyone does it so much differently. There's also like a decision spread. There's so many. And yeah, I know a lot of people that just pull one a day as well. So there's a lot of opportunity in it. And I think that there's a lot of misconception of what tarot is. And yeah, that's kind of the basis of tarot if you're still not too certain exactly what it means or what it is. And I know, Julianne, you have no experience with tarot. And when we went to the Scarecrow Festival a couple weeks ago, you that was your first reading ever.
It was. And I thought it was really cool. I mean, the whole premise of the Scarecrow Festival and having their little psychic, what was it called? Like a psychic fair, I think that was part of it. So Discover Charlottetown did all these great things around our city back in October, and that was part of it. So when I saw it, I had a feeling, this sounds like something that Steph and I should probably do individually, but together. Yeah. And I went in not knowing at all what to expect. In fact, I picked Steph up to drive there, and she's like, "What question are you going to ask?" And I was like, "I'm supposed to ask a question." So that's how green I was in this world, and I still really am. But it was neat to go in with no expectations too, I guess, right? Because I didn't want to go in thinking like, "Oh, this is going to solve all my problems or answer any uncertainties that I have or whatever." I just wanted to go in and see what it was and where it went, and really just trust the expert that was sitting across from me and pulling cards. Is that how they say it?
Yeah. Pulling the cards.
Pulling the cards.
Gotta pull more cards to get more clarity on that.
There we go. So it was really a neat experience. Part of it feels like a blur too, because it was a lot to try to absorb, and I am a note taker. Yeah. But I couldn't take notes. Maybe I could have. I just didn't ask.
Well, especially for like your first time too, you probably went in it with a little bit, not fear, but you know how like when you're trying new things, you don't fully absorb it because it's all like deer in headlights. Oh my gosh, this is what's going on. You're pulling random cards. Oh my gosh, look at the illustrations on that card.
Yeah. Ooh, does that mean something bad? Like one of them was like a fool, and I was like, I'm not a fool. But she was like, no, this means you should be having like fun and whatever. And I was like, oh, I would have misinterpreted that big time. I also had several major cards that came up on mine, which I kind of forgot about until you were just talking about the fact that there's major and minor in there. So that itself just like flipped right out of my head right away, because I was trying to grasp what the messages were, or what was really coming up. So it was really cool. The spread that she gave, I thought it was really cool, just as she was just seemingly so like casual about it, but like really in tune with who I was. We're having a bit of a conversation. She's shuffling. She's just like pulling out these random cards. She's like, "Oh no, not that one." It's like it's like they were choosing to pop out, and that they were choosing themselves rather than her just choosing them, or like me doing it. Like I thought that was kind of neat, that whole concept of like the shuffling and the popping.
I was gonna say that's how most people do it. Like I know when I'm pulling cards for myself, I will usually get the ones that naturally pop out because it's what's meant to be. And I think that's the whole purpose of tarot, is it's very attached to like the spiritual, what needs to happen will happen. And I think that's kind of important that you say that things would pop out, and then she would be like, "Oh, that's the card that we need to look at, focus on." Yeah. And it's also really based on intuition, which I think as a society, we aren't really connected to our intuition. And I have noticed that ever since I've started going a little bit more intense on my tarot practice, that my intuition is crazy. I'm super connected to my intuition, which before I felt was kind of foggy in a way, in a really weird way. If that makes any sense. So I think that's really cool that you said that she would notice that she needed to pull out this card because it was getting stuck, or it would pop out. And that's a huge part of actually tarot.
Cool. Excellent. Do you find your intuition is opening up in other parts too, or more so like when you're going through your tarot practice?
Oh, it's like through life. Like I definitely do notice that it's more heightened, because before I do, like, we'll get into this, but I have a whole entire ritual when it comes to that. Before it, I always do like a meditation, and I do find that I get a little bit more connected to my intuition in that sense. But then I have noticed that there'll be times where I just, you know how you get that gut feeling? I would get those every once in a while, but I'd always question them. But now every time I get that feeling, I'm like, no, I'm not going to take this contract because something doesn't feel right, which I think is really interesting, because it's actually helped my business huge, I will say. And we always have to circle back to the entrepreneur part. And for me, it's been a really welcomed practice. I'm not as much as a newbie as you. I am definitely not an expert either, though. So I may even slip up on certain things that when we kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm human. I'm still learning, but I definitely love watching them. I find I actually love going on YouTube, and YouTube has like a bunch of pick a card readings where there's a bunch of piles. There's like usually 3 piles. You pick the one that you feel most connected to and that's calling to you, and then they basically give you a reading on YouTube. Now, some people may argue that it's kind of reaching a bunch of people, so how can it be that reading for you? And they always say if you saw the video that it's your spirit and divine team connecting to you. Yeah, we're getting a little woo-woo here.
She saw the look on my face.
Yeah, we're going to get full woo-woo on this episode.
I was going to ask you that, though, because I have seen those come up, and it's like, okay, depending on which card you pick, then you jump ahead to whatever time stamp in the video,
I
right?
Like, told you, like, Julianne, you have to watch this video, and blah, blah, blah. This is all, like, it speaks to me, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I think I said you.
Yeah, they're different, and I've listened to a few, and I have a hard time connecting to just the screen. Like I want it to be me. But I certainly so into myself. But I could see that, right? Like if that's your option, then it's better than nothing too, right? If a tarot reading is something that you're feeling called to and you're not sure how to do it yourself, or you just don't want to do it yourself, like there's so many different tarot readers on YouTube. It's totally insane.
And I find it just really relaxing. I know we always go back to ASMR on this podcast. Oddly, I don't know why. But to me, it's kind of like ASMR. I like to just watch them. And same with like the astrology things. Like I just love watching. I find it so relaxing. Even though like sometimes they'll be like, oh, you got to watch out. There's someone sending you bad vibes. And I'm just like, oh, that sucks. But I'm all relaxed still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if it does, it's not hurting anybody when I watch them. I don't think anyway. I hope not.
It's like any of this stuff, right? Like whatever you feel drawn to and whatever works for you. It doesn't have to work for anybody else. If it makes you feel good, it helps you make solid decisions that you're feeling really confident in, then that's fantastic.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool. It's I took a few minutes to like sit down after we did my session, because I had mine first and then Steph had hers. So I sat on the beautiful patio at Beaconsfield looking over the water at Victoria Park. It was very serene. It was a beautiful day too.
Yeah, gorgeous.
And took notes of like everything I could remember, which felt really overwhelming but peaceful at the same time. And it's hard not to like hold really firmly on what they say, or like trying to figure out exactly what exactly was she talking about here. Cause she, like, one thing that was coming up was there's 2 things that I might need to like put aside for a little while. Mm-hmm. I still have no idea what those 2 things might be. But I'm trying not to get too hung up on it too. And I think I might like, it might just like click one day and be like, oh, that's what it was. So little things like that, just kind of hearing it, letting it soak in. But the doer in me wants to know, like, well, what exactly am I supposed to do right now? That yang, right? But then the being in me, or the yin side, needs to just let it fall and sit with it and really just soak it in. So it's like those 2 sides keep coming up in everything we talk about on Thriving Times, it seems.
That's so true.
It's really challenging me in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that I did notice that when we talked about it after, because of course we went to go grab a little drink after too.
Why not?
Just one. Being good.
I did not have just one the night before.
Yeah. But I really liked what you were saying, that like it kind of brought peace of mind, and that's what I think it's all about. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that it's predicting the future, and it's not supposed to. Like, if someone tells you that they're going to do a tarot reading to predict your future, like, walk away. That's not actually the intention, and that's the biggest struggle that I find, because when I first heard of tarot, when I was like, and I would get tarot readings every once in a while, like I've had them done for me, to me. For me. I don't know. But like, I've had them done, and every single time I thought it was a predicting the future. So then when it didn't come true, I'm just like, oh, this is all hogwash. This
they don't
doesn't
know what
work.
they're talking about.
Exactly. But the thing is, it's actually deeper than that. It's to provide comfort. It's also to provide a tool, and it's not really predicting every action that we do. Instead, it's kind of more of a, this could happen. Can you mentally prepare for it? You know what I mean? And sometimes we also think like cause and effect. Maybe if we start thinking that this is going to happen, maybe it will happen. And that's when, like, when you look at the cards, if a card is reversed, it can actually have a different meaning. Sometimes it's a negative meaning. So, for example, if I can't think of a card off the top of my head, but if, for example, one card, the upright position, it was like money, really good, nostalgia, happiness, and then its reversal was the complete opposite. And so automatic fear went into my, I'm gonna become bankrupt and blah blah blah. But that's not the intention of it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is it's more intuitive than that in a weird way. And I don't know. That's just what I found in my practice with it. So
that's interesting. Yeah, I think one of mine did come in upside down, but of course can't remember what it was. But it's neat to just hear too, okay, like, because you'll look at one and you're like, oh, that can't mean anything good. Like, you just don't even know, right? Yeah. Or like if something's like a really strong energy. I can't remember specifically which card was pulled when it was the one that she was like, here's the energy that you're bringing to the situation. But when I looked, I was like, oh, I was like, that ain't good. But she was like, this makes total sense though, because like we were talking a lot about the fact that I work a lot. Yes, I have a very like high capacity to be able to do so, but that I need to like figure out the rest a little bit better too. And that's what I was saying to Steph. I was like, it's nothing I don't know, but the reinforcement is just interesting and a new perspective of how to look at it. And the energy that I was bringing was just like a really strong, like masculine, like get things done kind of energy. So it did make a lot of sense. Wasn't necessarily this pretty happy card that I might have wanted to be the energy that I'm bringing, but that's simply what it is. And you interpret it as you want to, essentially, and take out of it what you will and leave the rest.
And that's the thing too, the other cards do support it. So I'm sure she in your reading would say, I'm going to pull more cards to get some more clarification on this. Because it's the thing too, sometimes some of the cards are kind of negative. And especially when you're trying to go into like the law of attraction and manifestation, you're not supposed to think too negative. But when you pull more cards, it's figuring out the solution to the negative in a sense, which I think is kind of interesting. Did she pull more cards to get clarification on your reading?
Not on that one specifically. So like my big reading, she did a really big reading and then a quick little mini one at the end. But I think too, because it was my first, or I don't know exactly how it all went, but she was taking a lot of time to explain them all, and then bam, time was up, and then we kind of rushed through the last little bit. And then because that was like my main focus, but I did have another thing I wanted her to pull on. So she was like, let's just do a quick 3-card pull on this one. Which was really interesting too, that just 3 cards can tell you as much as like, I think it was like 9 or 10 cards that she pulled for the first spread. So there's so many different ways to look at it, right? Like,
oh, totally. And another thing too is when you're training to be a tarot, it's looking at the cards, but also thinking like intuitively, what does it mean? And it also, again, goes back to like the energy. So they're probably reading the energy of you as well in a certain sense. And I think that goes along with like the intuition, the connection with the cards, and what the imagery is also evoking to attached to all of them. So
it's neat in a nutshell. And like thinking about it too, like, I mean, I think we both went in with like questions about our businesses and the podcast, which is really cool to just have a different perspective, right? Because I mean, you can get a business coach, you can do your time management, you can do all the things and feel like you hope you're on the right track. But if this is something that you're pulled towards, then it can help just give a different perspective or a different way of looking at things.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've definitely used tarot for. This is kind of one of those things. I'm not really, really religious, but my family's religious and I grew up religious. And I know like if my grandma was listening, I'm sure she wouldn't be happy that I'm playing with tarot cards, perhaps. And
is it like don't use it like a Ouija board type thing?
I think so. But to me, it's more so the connection, and especially, again, back to myself. It's bringing me inwards and really thinking about my actions that I take, because but before the podcast, I was very much quick to action, something bad happened, I would either have a panic attack, anxiety, retaliate in anger, retaliate in fear, and this is an opportunity to kind of, again, look inwards, which I think has been huge. And I have a little spiritual routine every Sunday that involves tarot cards too, which I think is a lot of fun.
That's
and
cool.
So every Sunday, if I can, when we went, it was a Sunday, so I couldn't really do it because I usually spend about 3 hours in my yoga room when I do my routine.
Oh my goodness.
3 to 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
James is like, hello. Where are you, wifey? That's awesome.
Oh no, he's happy because it makes me like super happy. And
it gives you guys each your own time.
Exactly. And it sets me up for like a really good week because I'm already starting to like kind of wind down from the weekend and give more time to myself and then reflect and then again set the intentions and kind of,
Yeah. So is this like a Sunday evening typically kind of thing, or midday? Like, yeah,
depending.
Whatever works with your schedule.
Exactly. So like sometimes it'll be evenings. Hypothetically, I could have done it after our day, but because we already had the tarot reading, I'm like, too much tarot.
One's enough.
Too much.
Yeah.
So usually what I do is I do a really deep and long yin practice, which, by the way, if you guys practice yoga and you just do like the hardcore yang yoga, try yin. It's my favorite yoga. It's really slow. You hold your poses for longer, and it's just, I always call it gooey. Like it's just you leave a yin. It's juicy and gooey. It's just awesome. I actually want to be a yin teacher when I'm older.
When I grow up.
Yeah, when I grow up.
Yeah.
Just because I love yin. Anyways, I digress. So it's kind of my my time to meditate and become inwards once more. And then I follow that by doing either like a little meditation. I'll light my incense and I make this like a whole practice. So I'll put like a candle on. I am really grateful and thankful I have a yoga room that I can do this all in. So like I have like my setup, I have my little salt lamp and everything's where it needs to be. And it's just like I have my plants everywhere. Everything that makes me happy is in that room in a sense, except for James. So then what I'll do is I'll just sit on my little yoga mat and my little meditation mat, and I'll pull cards, and then I'll pull oracle cards, and I'll journal, and if I feel inclined, I'll read, I just basically take care of myself. And the tarot part has become actually so vital to my self-care practice too, which I think is really crazy that my Sundays have evolved to that intense. But like I said, it sets me up. Like I love waking up on Mondays now, and my weeks just go by so much faster in a sense. I don't know.
That's cool.
But just like when we talk about like the morning routine, setting that time up for yourself can be so huge. And I'm lucky that I have the time and the means to do something like that. I totally understand, like if you have kids and stuff, it might be a little bit harder to set at like 3 hours of time, I'm sure, but but
you make what
you can from it. Yeah.
Like, thank you. Thank you for reading my mind.
You do what you can.
Yeah. And like if your life circumstances change too, like I'm sure you just evolve and figure it out, right? Or like different things come up. But I think that's really cool. If you have the time, like if you would otherwise be, not to say that just like watching TV is a bad thing or anything like that, but like if you can do that too, but you don't need to do it for an entire day. So if this lights you up and has made such a huge impact in your mental health and your perspective, your attitude, like who else can say I'm so excited for Mondays to come You know,
Right.
you set the intention, you have the ritual. I think that's really neat.
Exactly. And I read my cards really differently. It's funny because I was watching a couple different about tarot videos. Because again, I am trying to learn a little bit more about it because I'm also doing it myself. I want to make sure that I'm not reading the cards wrong and going through like a little panic attack because some of the cards looked negative, you know, which when I first got this tarot deck, I actually did go through a bad spiral because I thought I was going to get sued or something. Like that's when my deck was all negative or my spread was all negative when I first opened it. But yeah, when I was doing my research, a lot of the like expert tarot people always said you can't read yourself and that you should always consult a tarot expert to get a reading. And I thought that was so strange because the way I see it, you know yourself better. So if you're using it to connect with yourself, why would you go get a reading? Now, I do think it's nice to go get a reading, and I think it's really interesting to see what they come up with, and they can reach into certain things where they're not biased, which I think is a huge thing because you can be biased towards yourself. But at the same time, and this is just my caveat from when we went, so like for example, like my reading was really good. I really enjoyed my reading and it did kind of connect. But for example, she actually started saying that I was going to discover a new love and that it's going to be the most passionate love and it's going to be forever love. But I'm married and I'm happily married and I'm not looking for any particular love, you know? And so when I literally said, I'm married. And she's like, oh my goodness, I don't know what this is meaning. I'm going to pull more cards to get more clarification. That's when I'm kind of like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I know myself that I know that I'm married and I'm in love. I can pull cards. And if it comes into like that, the love cards, perhaps it's meaning that my marriage is going to go into a deeper phase, for example.
Right.
And I think that when I keep reading that you shouldn't read yourself, I call BS on it in a sense, even I know you're not supposed to, but I don't know. That's just my opinion.
I think either way has its pros, right? Like you were saying, it's nice to have someone pull for you that doesn't have like the biases or the background or whatever. So they might help you see it in a different light, but they also could just go like way off track too, right? So it could go in either direction, but good on you for not listening to them. Just doing what feels right.
Do what I want to do.
I do what I want.
So since I journal everything, I actually can look at past spreads that I pulled. And it's funny because some people can say that, because you're thinking that's going to come true because you're looking for that to come true. You know what I mean? I think you were saying that your partner kind of discredits tarot because it's just pulling random information. And I could see that, like even with psychics.
Yeah, any energy type stuff, he doesn't understand, or he just hasn't really looked that far into. So he's just like, it's pretty general. Like, I think you're reading into what you want to. And that could be true. I'm okay with it, like, if that's the case. But it's interesting to see what comes up. And like, so you're saying that you've journaled. Do you write down like all the cards that you've pulled for yourself whenever you journal?
Yes. So because I'm also learning, the way I learn is by writing things down.
Same.
Right?
Yeah.
So every time I pull up a card, I will actually write its meaning. So like in the tarot deck that I have, it's really cute because it's a pastel deck, of course. It's a kawaii and it's all in like icons. So like the graphic design pastel nerd in me just loves it. But it actually gives kind of like the general and after the paragraph. So I'll write them all down. And the whole point is that you're supposed to kind of look at the spread intuitively and see what comes up, like emotion. So you look at like the pictures, the colors, the meanings of it and blending it all together. And so because I'm learning, I'm also writing it down. I think in general, I might just write it down because of what I've found in writing it down. And it's funny because I wanted to kind of bring it up that like I've noticed a couple times where I would go back without realizing that it actually did happen in a certain sense.
Right.
So one example was that I had a spread and every single card was about communication. And I think it was actually close to when we did the communication episode, which I think is actually really creepy. And it's funny because it was also a lot of negative and like the miscommunication, especially, which again, I was a little bit fearful of that spread and I felt a little bit anxious about it. But then I realized, okay, this is a tool for me to kind of realize, hey, Steph, take a step back,
right?
Be more mindful. And it did seem like everybody was negative and impatient. Like my emails were just... every other person was upset and I just felt defeated in a certain sense. But because I realized that the tarot card said that I was going to have a negative week, I almost was prepared to have a negative week. So mentally I was ready. I came up with the tools of, okay, I need to remember that I can't take everything personally. I need to remember that everyone's going through their own struggles. And one of my decks is actually an affirmation, and it talks about don't read into other people's stories. What they feel is what they feel, but it's not your story.
Right.
It's not who you are. And that was huge. And yeah, I didn't play the victim at all. I just kind of was able to persevere through what would have been a really difficult week. And so then when I reflected on it the next Sunday, I actually realized, hey, this had helped me in a certain way for my business, especially because I would have just retreated. I would have gone through an anxiety attack. I would have probably cried. I didn't cry once that week, which is pretty crazy considering the shit that was happening, you know? Yeah. Shit was in the fan, let's just say that. And I think that's kind of impactful and I think kind of a testament to where I'm coming from, that even though yes, there is some kind of generalization and you can read into it what you want to read into it, I do find that for the most part, it has come true in every single thing I've spread. And it also, again, prepares me. So like, for example, even if I have a really good spread and it says your week's going to be great, you're going to be happy, I'm going to have the mentality that my week is going to be great. And that already sets me up for like, it's like the power of thought, right? If you start thinking, if you start smiling, you're going to make yourself happy. You know what I mean? And so then I was like, I'm going to have a great week. So I'm just going to have a great week.
It's just going to happen.
You know? So, and again, even though it may have been a bad week, in my head, I thought it was a good week in a really weird way. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. But then when you flip it over and you were talking about like the communication one and it was all negative.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that instead of going into it, like you could have went in being like, oh, I'm going to brace myself. This week's going to be shit. Yeah. I'm just going to be hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. Yeah. Maybe I just want to crawl into a ball and hide. But instead you use that in a different way, right? And we're able to still come into it with a positive as you could of energy and saying like, okay, like this week is going to challenge me, but I'm strong enough to face it. I'm ready to show up. I can handle whatever comes my way. So it's almost like it wasn't a full stop. It was a warning sign or like a caution, proceed with caution or whatever, right?
That's exactly what it is. Okay. It's literally like a big yellow light saying, hey, this could possibly be a thing. Be cautious of it. And for the most part, whenever there is kind of a negative cards, that's kind of intuitively what I think is happening. Again, I'm not an expert. Maybe I'm reading them completely wrong, but considering my journal entries and what has happened the weeks after, because again, like part of my spiritual practice is looking back the week before to see what happened, what could I do differently, because I do think it's always good to look at what happened in the week as well and reflect within the week. And yeah, I just, again, it's going back to connecting with like your higher self, going inwards and thinking on a deeper level. And I do think that, again, it connects you to your intuition. And it can't just be a coincidence, you know? so many times that I'll pull certain cards, and like there's one card that keeps coming up. It's the Five of Cups, I think. And I think it talks always about like your inner child and past conflicts. And it's so true. I hold so deeply past events, and I let past events dictate my future. So you can't do that. So it's a constant reminder, oh, hey, Steph, you need to stop. You have to let go of shit. And so that's one of my biggest intentions, is like letting go of things. And I find that it has helped me kind of, think. And especially when if you're like me, where you have trouble getting outside of your own head, and you let the negative things kind of fester and snowball into bigger bad thoughts, it's kind of nice to get an outside perspective, even if it just brings inner peace to myself, right. And I think at the end of the day, because it's part of my self-care practice, it does bring a little bit of inner peace to myself, because I feel like I have the tools. I like to not control things, but I feel anxiety around things that I can't control. And I feel like if I have these cards, even though it's not predicting my future, nor do I think it's predicting my future, I feel like I have this certain sense of control that if anything were to happen, I have the tools to kind of help me with it.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Again, I'm so new to it, but it's I love hearing your journey with it, and how it's become such a common practice for you. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I should do it more, but I'm also trying not to put too much more on my plate. So
yeah. It's funny because every time I'm like, I bought a new deck, like I always get an Oracle deck. You're like, oh, wow.
I'm like, I feel like I would buy them and they would just sit there, but I know myself, right? But me, maybe watching a few more YouTubes and doing those guided ones would be really interesting too. Because sometimes, I've talked on here too about how much I love my journaling also.
Yeah.
But I'm a free flow journaler, right? And then sometimes I sit there and I feel like I'm just staring at my page being like,
what do I want to talk about?
What's on my mind? What's happening? Or I feel like I'm just repeating the same thing day after day. Or even I just am essentially just narrating what my day before was. Sometimes that comes up, right? Where I'm just here's what I did yesterday, because there's nothing really picking at me or whatever, where perhaps if I watched a tarot reading ahead of time, it might just provoke a little something or bring me in a different direction. It's it's just an interesting way to have a new perspective on things, so that we can be grounded in who we are, a little more centered, and even just aware, or like how you were saying, right? If there's a sense that there could be a difficult week coming up, that you're more prepared for it. You're making sure that you're really leaning into your self-care practice, taking care of yourself, giving yourself that rest. Or if you know it's going to be an exciting week or it's looking really positive, then that's a really nice thing to know too. Mm-hmm. So to be able to have that understanding of yourself to show up for your business can make a world of a difference in how you're delivering to your clients, and just being able to be kind to yourself through all of it too.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Today in the closet, I actually brought an Oracle deck, my favorite Oracle deck. And it's kind of funny because I bought it when we started the podcast, because I saw it at Indigo and it just spoke to me. And it's the self-care Oracle deck. And originally the intention that I had for this episode, I wanted to pull a bunch of cards. But again, I'm not really confident just yet. Maybe in the future, or maybe we'll get someone who actually does read tarot that could kind of do some tarot readings for us on the episode too. But for today, I thought I'd pull a couple self-care Oracle. And this one's really cool because I even like the little saying on the inside. It says, "Take care of yourself so you can shine your soul's light," which I just love that.
That's lovely.
Plus, the illustrations, again, the designer in me just loves that. And it's so colorful and bright.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
So this one is not 78 cards. It's only a 55 card deck. So when you get Oracle cards, it kind of depends deck to deck how many are in the cards. I've seen some that were only 45. I've seen some that are only 30. I've seen some that are close to 80 as well. So there's a lot of different decks for what you're looking for. I have just kind of collected them as they speak to me, which is really bad. But it's another resource to kind of add to your tarot readings and get more clarity. Some people say that it helps build a theme towards what the general message is as well. So I think that's really cool. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to pull 3 cards and see what you guys might get inspired and what 3 calls to you will be what you should do for the rest of October for self-care. How about that? Yeah?
Yeah. Or November.
November. Oh my goodness. So let's see what these 3 cards, what your self-care should look like for this week. I'm going to pull 3 cards, I think.
What are they gonna be?
I'm going to pull one for you too, specifically as well.
For me?
Yeah. I'm going to get you to pull one.
Okay.
So I've seen some people do this where they actually have the person pick it, which I think is kind of interesting. So, Julianne, I'm going to... I have tiny hands, so fanning it's a little hard.
Which one's calling my name?
Don't overthink it. Use your intuition.
This one. Come on. Am I looking at it?
Yeah, look at it. What's your self-care?
Take a walk.
Oh, you already do that. That's awesome. Go take another walk.
Go take another walk. I love it. That's cute.
Yeah, and I'll put like a little thing right there. Yeah, I think that's a really nice one. And it's cool because like it has a lot of really inspirational illustrations on it. And I kind of just love the illustrations, which I think is kind of cool. Now, let's pull 3 for you guys. What do you need?
What do you need?
Is it weird that I'm kind of like nervous pulling cards for... Because I do it all for myself, so it's like...
Yeah, I think it makes sense to be nervous.
Seems weird to...
Let's all send Steph happy energy.
Good juju.
Let's see what she pulls for us.
And for those of you who are listening and not watching the video, which by the way, if you want to, you can always look at our YouTube, Thriving Tides. Go check out the live. But for those of you that are listening, pick a number between 1 and 3. So 1, 2, or 3. And we'll tell you what pulled up for you.
Yeah.
And for those of you watching, this will be number 1. This will be number 2. This will be number 3. So let's start with number 1. So if you chose number 1, you're going to want to sync with the moon, which is crazy because that was a couple episodes ago.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. So if you listen to our last episode, you're definitely going to want to sync with the moon. Maybe
sync with the moon.
Watch it. And if you haven't watched or listened to our last episode,
2 episodes ago.
Oh, 2 episodes ago. Yeah,
I know.
Go check it out. So confused. But yeah, go check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
so
awesome.
That's kind of funny.
Number 16 was our moon episode.
Yes, correct. And if you chose number 2, you're going to want to create art.
Oh,
I like that
and
one.
And then show us.
Yeah, I was going to say show us.
We'd love to see it.
Exactly. And that's the thing too. You don't have to necessarily know how to do art. We have things like the East Coast Art Party you can go to here in Charlottetown.
Cool. Go to Hive and Hollow.
Hive and Hollow. You can paint some pottery. If you're not on the island, you can go on a YouTube and check out different kinds.
So many cool things you can do.
There's so much. You don't have to. And that's the thing, that the biggest misconception. I used to actually teach art classes. People would say, I can't do this because I have no creative ability. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So just remember that. It does not have to be perfect.
It's all about the energy. Yeah.
Exactly. It's an outlet. It's just something to kind of take your mind off of it and don't go in it trying to feel perfect. It's self-care. All right. And for those of you who picked, this is for our female. This is for our female listeners. So I'm sorry for our few token males that perhaps listen to or watch our podcast.
And picked number 3.
Number 3. I guess Yeah.
I don't even know what it is, so I'm curious.
Connect with your womb.
Oh, maybe you have a female in your life whose womb you can connect with. I don't know.
Yeah, PMS. Like they're going through a period or something. Maybe. Crazy if I pulled this card, you picked number 3 and you're going through your period right now. That'd be kind of crazy. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like little things like that. And it's kind of funny that a couple episodes ago we talked about kind of like the moon cycles, and it comes like a little book, and there's different kinds of spreads you can do, and one of them is actually about like a moon ritual, so like following the cycles of the moon. So it's kind of funny that it all circles, it all connects. Right? But yeah, so those are the 3 cards that I pulled, and it's crazy because I get kind of random ones. Like the one that I picked for this week was cleaning, so I've been trying to intentionally clean throughout the week because that'll be my self-care goal for the week, to try new things. I think that's like the cool thing too, is it kind of forces you to try a couple new self-care things, because I think we do kind of get stuck in the same old self-care, and then it just becomes a routine. And is it self-care anymore? I don't know. Right, it's a habit now. It's still self-care, but if you're going through it, because like once something's a habit, you're not really having to think about doing it. So then are you getting the same benefits? Hard to say. Right. But yeah, I like introducing new things. I think this is a really neat way to do that. Yeah, and it's pretty too. And it's really pretty, and it kind of ties in with our podcast, and that's the thing too. If you still feel like tarot is still a little bit too much and a little too woo-woo, you can even start with just oracle cards or like affirmation decks. I know you have an affirmation deck. I really like my affirmation deck. Yeah. So usually at the end of my morning routine, I'll just shuffle through it in a bunch of different random ways, and then just pull one out. And it probably helps you with like your journaling too, right? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I'll do it before the journal. Sometimes I'll do it after. And they're also very beautiful and just really nice affirmations that just make me feel nice. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's my ease into things. Like if I went and bought a tarot deck, it would just sit and collect dust. Yeah. But just reading an affirmation each day, easy. Well, it also connects to what you do as well. Yeah. Right. Exactly. You've always been affirmation based too. So yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, this is neat. Yeah, so we always like to pass it off to you guys too. Is there do you guys practice any tarot? Have you gotten a tarot reading? Or do you just kind of stick to oracle decks, or do you just think this is all crazy? Yeah. Yeah, there could be. I'm sure we'll get answers from all of those columns. So yeah, probably. Share with us, or, whichever one of these 3 cards that you picked, if they resonated with you and they've provoked any action, feel free to share as well. We'd love to hear what you've done with them. I was going to say, yeah, definitely. If you guys do, let us know what card you ended up picking, because I think that's kind of interesting too. Yeah, very much. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Bye. Bye. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Thriving Tides. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected. And remember, don't fight the rip currents.